Hi, everybody. My name is Jo White. I'm a clinical psychologist and advanced certified schema therapist, and I've come to share some ideas with you around finding an image to work with using imagery and scripting. My name is Jo White. Some ideas with you around. I just turn that off so that it turns my feedback off. Okay, I'm back with you. I was getting some feedback then from going live. Okay, so I'm coming to share some ideas with you around finding an image to work on using imagery rescripting. So some of my supervisees come to me and say, you know, I can see the benefits of imagery rescripting, but where do I start? How do I find a memory to work on? So I'm going to give you a few of my ideas, my thoughts around how I tend to find an image to work on using rescripting. If you have any worries about whether your client is ready to start imagery rescripting of their early experiences, I've created a free checklist to guide you through what to cover before you start. So I'll put a link in the comments to the checklist. So please get yourself a copy, as that will help to give you the confidence to get started with imagery rescripting when you're feeling a bit uncertain. Okay, so back to how to find an image to work on. I'm going to talk through 3 different ways that I might find an image. Let me know in the comments how you get on with these ideas. I'm sure that they'll be familiar to you, maybe some new ideas. Let me know how you get on, and if there are any blocks that you find. I'd also love to hear about any different ways that you find to identify images to work on using rescripting. So the first way that I would identify an image is through using the effect bridge. So to use the effect bridge, you go from a recent triggering experience and you link back to an early experience. So often clients will come to session with an experience where they felt triggered during the week prior to the session, where there's been some schema activation. So you start by helping your client to really reimagine the scene of what was happening when they felt all of that schema activation, when they were really triggered. So I will ask clients to imagine the worst point. You know, what was the moment when they felt really, really triggered? So maybe they were sitting on a train and an argument broke out within the carriage. Then I'll ask them to think about, you know, how did they feel about themselves? What thoughts were coming up? And perhaps in this scenario, I'm going to get hurt. And it was at that moment when the man raised his voice that I really noticed the response within myself. So identifying that exact moment, helping them to tune into the emotions that they experience at that point. Perhaps they felt really terrified, scared, body sensations, maybe they were shaking, their heart racing, sweaty hands, perhaps a deep kind of lurch in their stomach. So you've really helped to activate that event within their mind, within the session. And then you just ask them to, you know, amplify the feelings, but allow the image to fade of the recent experience and just to float back to a time when they were little, when they felt a similar way. And giving them plenty of time to find an image. Sometimes clients might not float back very far. So you've got 2 options there, really. You could go through the process again of the effect bridge from that place that they've identified, and see if they can get back earlier. If sometimes I find that clients have real blocks about getting back to early experiences, and perhaps those experiences are too overwhelming for them at an early stage in therapy, and so we might just rescript a later experience, and I find that can still be really beneficial and help to give them an experience of rescripting without having to go to the really, really scary memories, and then you can build on that and get back to early experiences later on in therapy. So schema therapy theory suggests that what's triggering in the present points to what's unresolved from the past. And so that's why the effect bridge is a good place to start, to identify an image to work on using rescripting. So that's the first way that I might use. A second way is a little bit similar, but perhaps your client arrives in the session and they're already really, really activated. Perhaps there's something about the session that's triggered them, maybe something immediately prior to the session. So they arrive in a distressed state, maybe very cross, or but you identify quickly that there's some schema activation there. And so already the emotion and the activation is live. And so you don't need to key them into anything. You can just ask them to close their eyes and to float back to a time when they were younger, when they felt a similar way. And I find that's a really effective way of getting to an early memory, because the activation is just so live in the room with you. So that's a really a good way of identifying an image to work on. Of course, when you find the image with either of those methods, then you spend some time exploring it together before going into rescripting. So the third way I'm going to talk about today is when you might have identified some memories during your assessment phase. So hopefully during your assessment, your client has brought various memories and experiences that they still feel triggered by today. So when they connect up with that memory, it still upsets them or makes them cross, or they feel really terrified. And so during the assessment phase, I would tend to create perhaps a timeline, or make sure that I list these memories somewhere. So I keep a note of them somewhere. And so perhaps, clients sometimes arrive to session and there hasn't been any schema activation during the week, or nothing that they can connect with. And so this could be a good time to work on one of those memories that they have identified as being distressing. And so then you can go straight to that as the target for your work that day, for your imagery rescripting that day. So those are three of the ways that I might use to identify an image to work on using rescripting. Do let me know if you have any other ways, or any comments or thoughts you have about those methods of finding an image. I'll share the link to my free checklist too in the comments, so do get hold of a copy of that so that it gives you the confidence to get started with imagery rescripting. Okay, thanks everyone, and I will see you at the start of March for another video on experiential exercises.